world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Thursday, the 6th of August, year of our Lord 2026. Well, today we're going to take a look again at the rapidly metastasizing cancer of surveillance. It is a turbo cancer. It is very similar to the mRNA in that regard, and the stealth and the deception that is happening. We're moving to the next stage. Forget about the cameras on poles. They're rapidly moving to surveillance via drones. Yeah, this is rapidly spreading in the area in which I live, and we're going to talk about some specifics about that. And the tactics that they're using, folks, are not just here in rural Tennessee. This is rolling out everywhere across the country. So we're going to take a look at that, as well as, speaking of cancer and vaccines, Trump's pro-vaccine, pro-mRNA nominee for CDC was just approved by the GOP. And we're going to take a look at the rapid expansion of taking away the exemptions, religious exemptions for children to attend school, whether we're talking about the Amish in New York or whether we're talking about other school children in West Virginia. They are taking away informed consent with the rest of our liberty. Well, let's begin with the the comical lies that are told by these people who are in power. Of course, we have, we're going to talk first about Darlene Graham, who has decided, much to the consternation of the people who were in the South Carolina GOP establishment, she decided that she would get into the regular election. And so they've had to do a primary for that now. They've already had a primary. They already had a nominee. But they've got to do this again and do it just for this person that Trump appointed. And they're very upset about that within the GOP. So she starts out in second place, even though he appointed her to finish the term of her brother, Lindsey, who died. And so they had a debate about this, and she was asked about the surveillance issue and the data centers and the flock cameras. And basically she said, just kind of get over it. It's not really a problem. Listen to this.
I do agree with him. We can't let China get ahead in this technology competition. They can't control AI. They can't control technology. I think we need to build data centers here.
You can't control it. That's the problem.
I think the tech companies should build the power plants to supply the data centers, because that way it doesn't drive up utility costs for the average American or the average South Carolinian. Now, you know, the Democrats, they don't want the data centers because, you know why? Because they don't like the noise of the data centers. But we have to remain competitive against China. That's just a fact.
So you don't like the noise? Well, vote Democrat. And of course, she agreed with the person who was before it because, hey, we got to stop China, right? It's all about China. And of course, I played for this for you yesterday. This is not an AI thing that I did. This is Marsha Blackburn showing her stupid all by herself.
How hard am I going to crack down on China? Well, here's a clue.
Marsha Blackburn.
I'm going to rip up some fortune cookies. We're going to pay a fortune to the surveillance companies.
As governor, Marsha will fight to protect Tennessee land from Chinese front companies, close loopholes, and hunt down every communist who tries to defy us.
It doesn't take a fortune cookie to figure it out. Here in Tennessee, we're going to stop communist China and protect Tennessee land.
Oh, she's a smart cookie, isn't she? Yeah. Well, we are going to have the misfortune of having her as governor, I'm sure. But it's not quite clear that Darlene is going to make it past the post. There will at least probably be a runoff. As I said, she is in second place, and there are several candidates that have double digits. Nobody is really very high. The highest ranking guy in the polls is at 22%. This is Congressman Ralph Norman, who is out of South Carolina and has been in Congress since 2017. So he's been there for nearly a decade. He was in the state legislature for 11 years before that. Of course, Darlene has never held any elected office. She's just had whatever rubbed off on her from Lindsey Graham. And that's a big negative for her. And so as a result, when they look at this and they did the polls, one of the things they found was that only 4% of the people who are likely to vote in the South Carolina primary want foreign policy to be the number one issue. So how did Lindsey Graham keep getting reelected over and over again? And so she has noted that, and she made a statement. She said, well, Lindsey was more focused on national security. I know that's important, but I'll probably be focused on affordability. What matters to families, to struggling families? There you go. She'll probably be more focused on it. That's kind of a weak promise, isn't it? And of course, do you really believe that? Do you think that if she gets in office, she's going to be putty in the hands of fake Israel and the military-industrial complex? Of course she is. So these 4% of the people who want that, they may want to take a look, even if you're interested in foreign policy. He had a bad foreign policy. As a matter of fact, we had Trump melting down at Camp David when he finally realized, hey, we are out of missiles, as everybody's been saying. I mean, there's been report after report after report for quite some time. And he just evidently got the memo as they were at Camp David, and he went crazy on War Pete. I thought we had that fixed. You know, I've been telling everybody we had these missiles, just making it up. And so going back to Marsha Blackburn, she says that the Senate has the votes to confirm Todd Blanche. And at the same time, she's complaining about the fact that she and other senators, and maybe even their families, were illegally surveilled by Jack Smith. It's like, wait a minute, this is the lady who wants to put in all the flock cameras and the data centers, and she's worried because somebody was looking at her family and her life, when she hadn't done anything wrong, right? It will be weaponized politically, and I've said this for the longest time. These politicians who despise the Bill of Rights, who do everything they can to subvert it, don't realize they'll be the first ones up against the wall. And they will be. They are the interesting people. They will come for them first. And so she goes from laying the groundwork for a surveillance state to supporting the crook who set up the Trump slush fund and a $100 million get out of jail and fines agreement for Trump. So she wants to put in this Epstein crony. Look at the fact that we just had these Epstein victims finally got him to agree to meet with them. They'd been pushing this for many, many months. I wonder who pushed him to go meet with Ghislaine Maxwell. He went to meet her in prison, spends the day with her. Next thing you know, she's transferred to Club Fed, a minimum security resort. But he doesn't want to talk to the victims at all. And when he finally does talk to the victims, they all come out and said, well, he was really petulant. He was condescending. So exactly what do you want? What is the problem here? He's saying, That's the guy that Marsha Blackburn wants as a permanent attorney general. Isn't that amazing? And so then you go from that to the surveillance issue. She said investigations have recovered additional evidence that could support a potential criminal charge against former special prosecutor or special counsel Jack Smith. Yeah, don't surveil me, surveil other people. Hey, Marsha, if you've done nothing wrong, what are you worried about, right? Who needs a warrant? We don't need to have a warrant. We don't need those stinking badges here. She said this got out of committee. The Todd Blanche thing had a couple of people who were holdouts, but they voted yes after Blanche provided a written notice that the Justice Department had rescinded the $1.8 billion Trump so-called anti-weaponization fund, the slush fund, because it was going to be controlled entirely by Trump. He was going to pick people on the board. They were going to decide who got this money, and they were going to do it all secretly, no transparency. And of course, he could put people on the board and remove the people on the board at will. What do you think they're going to do? She said, Blackburn said, I think once he provided the documents that Cornyn and Tillis were wanting, I think that we're well on our way to seeing him confirmed. It got out of committee, so now it's going to go to the full Senate. Blackburn said she also believes investigations are continuing to gather evidence related to Smith taking the phone records, including hers, and those of about a half dozen other Republican senators. Remember, she thinks that the surveillance is simply phone records. Marsha. That was where these people were back in the 1960s. That's why they had the FISA Act as a result of the Church Committee hearings in the Senate. You might want to go back and check the history on that. At that point in time, it was about getting phone records. It's about way more than that now. Your phone is a big part of it. It is the tracking device, as the NSA said themselves in a series of slides that were released by Ed Snowden and not covered in the United States, not in the U.S. media. It was covered in the German media. Der Spiegel had the clips, and I've talked about this before. Said, who would have thought in 1984, and it shows the Macintosh commercial of that Ridley Scott did as he introduced it, the 1984 theme. Who would have thought in 1984 that this would become Big Brother? And they show Steve Jobs holding up an iPhone. And then it shows a big line at the iPhone store, and it says, and that the zombies would line up to pay for it themselves. Yeah, that's the issue. It's the phone, but now we have the flock cameras on poles, and if that's not enough, it's not just, and that's the other thing. Well, it's just looking at license plates, and law enforcement needs that. No, they don't. It hasn't helped them to solve crimes. You look at what happened with Atlanta, 5,000 cameras there. What happened to their crime statistics? They were either level or they went down after they put those in. The flock cameras are going to make them even lazier, just like it makes everybody lazy in every profession. So they probably will do less in terms of actually getting crime. It will be used for the crime of surveillance. It will be used for a bring me the man and I'll find the crime type of Big Brother government. It'll be used for that. But in terms of things like rape and robbery and car theft, it's pretty ineffective. So she alleged the investigators found evidence showing records beyond just telephone tolling data, including emails that were obtained during his investigation. Blackburn questioned whether additional personal information, including financial records or information involving family members, may also have been collected from prominent conservatives. She said, the thing is this. What else did they go after? Were they surveilling our family members? Were they surveilling other people that they were talking to? How wide is this net? That's a good question. How wide is the net that you're trying to put on us, Marsha Blackburn? You might want to go back and see if they didn't have the flock systems back then 6 years ago, but you may want to think about that. You want to beat China? Well, you're doing a pretty good job of it. You are setting up a surveillance state that is going to rival what they have. This is not about a corporate competition, because they're kicking our butt when it comes to corporate competition. Their cost factors are 100 times less. Why do our AI wannabe masters, why does their stuff cost 100 times more? Could it be because they're getting a lot of money channeled to them by the Pentagon and the military? What does that do to companies? It makes them less efficient. Maybe that's what's really going on here. But if you're worried about the company's survival, she's not worried about your survival. She's not worried about the survival of your liberty, of your freedom and the Bill of Rights. That is disposable. She argued that Congress should consider legislation to prevent further special counsels from obtaining similar records, and said reform may be needed to govern how special counsels are appointed. Yeah, I heard something about this thing that the founders did. I think they called it the Fourth Amendment or something. It's like get a warrant. And yet you look at these people like Mike Johnson, whom people are saying, hey, there's no warrant for what ICE and Border Patrol are doing or these other people are doing. We can't bother with warrants. They take forever. We can't bother to board boats. If we see them in the Caribbean, we just blow them up on sight. If it looks suspicious, kill everybody. And if you don't get them in the first round, and circle back and execute the survivors who are flailing in the water. That's the rules under which this criminal American government operates now. It is amazing to see how they have shredded all legal basis, all moral basis, all justification for what they do. So anyway, she said the point is to make certain that those privacy protections are there for our citizens. No, she doesn't care about privacy for citizens. She cares about privacy for herself, for politicians. This woman is pushing warrantless surveillance to the nth degree. And then the Kids Online Safety Act, which was something that she sponsored, along with Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat, a bipartisan way to get ID online. And I thought it was kind of interesting. This article from CNBC completely ignores the fact that this is a bill to make sure that we have ID for everybody that gets on the internet. And they're coming after this in multiple ways. There's also been another bill that's introduced that we'll get to in just a second here that would require ID for every operating system, every app, every website would have to have your ID. Have to know your age because you got to protect the kids, right? And so Marcia is there with her Kids Online Safety Act. Well, it is exactly the same as the Online Safety Act in the UK, which is a default a de facto way of getting everybody's ID. You got to prove to us that you're not a kid, so give us your ID. And in this article, they completely avoid talking about that. Let me tell you how they are lying to you about this, because this is a common tactic by these people. I had an interview yesterday that we're going to air for you tomorrow with a state representative out of Iowa. And she's been involved in trying to put transparency on what's going on with these data centers and with the cameras that are rolling out. She understands what the issue is. As a matter of fact, there are other bread and butter issues. If you can't get people worried about a police surveillance state, if all they're concerned about are electric bills and noise and water usage and things like that, there's a whole nother set of problems that we've never talked about on this show before, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. She got into it. She had some great insights about that. But they don't want to have any oversight. They don't want anybody to, she put a bill up that just said, tell us what you're going to do, basically. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. And they pushed back against that. And the Republicans in Iowa stopped that bill. You see, that's how this system works. You have the parties are running this country. They determine who gets on the ballot. They determine who gets into the debates. They determine how the voters are going to be distributed in the various districts by gerrymandering. And then if you get somebody that is good that gets past the post, we've seen how that works in Congress. For example, Thomas Massey's introduced a lot of really good bills. Whatever happens to those? Well, they get stopped by the Speaker of the House. They're not allowed to vote on this. You're not allowed to debate this. They won't even bring it up for a vote on the floor. Same thing happened to her bill about transparency for the data centers. We'll just stop this. This is why when you look at how corrupt and inflexible, how calcified this system is, it truly is a dead system that rigor mortis has set in. It's totally inflexible. So let's talk about how they lie on CNBC and how Marsha Blackburn and the people who put this bill together lie to you about the ID issue. They're upfront about it in the UK. They don't really care. It's like China, right? China says, you're going to do this, and we don't care what your concerns are. And the same thing is happening, of course, in the UK. Here, they have to pretend, well, that's not really what's happening. And they do it in a very subversive, sneaky way behind your back. The Kids Online Safety Act, known as KOSA, cleared a key hurdle Wednesday by advancing through the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. This is aimed, says CNBC, at establishing protections for children's online safety by creating parental controls and studying the impact of social media on the well-being of kids. You don't need a bill out of the federal government to do that, right? Why would you make a federal case out of this? If the parents want to control what the kids see, they don't need this. This doesn't help them do that. There are apps out there. There have been apps out there since Travis and Lance were kids where you could control the internet. If you want to know what they're watching, you can use those apps to control that. It's been there for a very long time. Or if you want to, you just don't give them a computer, or you don't give them access to the internet, or you don't give them a phone and pay the bill every month. so they can do this on their own. So you already have parental controls if you want to use them. We don't need to make a federal case out of it. But nowhere in this article do they talk about IDs for adults. And I think it is the most disingenuous thing that is there. As a matter of fact, what they do in this bill, they say, they specifically talk about it in the bill. They say, nothing in this bill will be interpreted as mandating age or to get age verification. So we're not going to have age gating, and we're not going to have age verification. Nothing in this bill requires that. But you do have a, quote, duty of care as somebody who is operating the platform or whatever they're accessing here. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you don't collect this information and some child uses it, we're going to hit you with, like $7,500 per event. And that can add up very, very quickly. So I'm not mandating the ID, right? We're just saying that you've got a duty to make sure that you know your customer. What does that affect? What is going to happen with that? It's just like the lies that we saw with social media. I'm not censoring people. I'm just saying, you probably want to take a look at this, this, and this, and you probably want to turn over this information to us, that type of thing. That's exactly what we've seen. As a matter of fact, an even better example is what the Republican governor, Brad Little, did in Idaho. He was getting all this money from Trump to run the lockdown and the pandemic scam, and he wanted to keep that going, but the Republican legislature did not want to keep that going. So they decided they were going to meet and shut that down. He shut them down, said, no, you can't meet. Then he put together his own legislation and called them back into session and said, here, pass this. What was that legislation? It's basically the same thing that Marsha Blackburn's doing here. What he said was, okay, we're not going to force you to have all these measures that Fauci and Trump are telling everybody. Fauci tells everybody, Trump pays them to do what Fauci says. So we're not going to require you to do that. You don't have to require masks from your customers. You don't have to require the 6-foot distancing or, silly things like I remember the gigantic grocery stores in Austin. They had lines on the floor. They paid for applique to get stickers put on the floor to show the direction that you could travel. And you couldn't go in. They had doors on either side, but one door was the indoor. The other door was the outdoor. You couldn't, somehow this virus gets transmitted if you go the wrong way in the store. It was so magical, and it was such a farce. But anyway, Brad Little said, if you do all these Fauci says rules, Fauci says this, Fauci says that. If you do all that, and somebody claims that they got COVID because they went to your store because it was open, we will indemnify you. We'll insure you against that lawsuit. But if you don't do everything Fauci says, and somebody says that they got COVID in your store, then it's on you. It's a nice business you got there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it, right? That's exactly what Marsha is doing. The duty of care. Yeah, you've got a duty to care for these people, so you better enforce all the Fauci rules. You've got a duty of care for the kids, so you better get their ID. That's the kind of cynical lies coming from Marsha Blackburn and Blumenthal on this bill, and the Senate loves it. And as a matter of fact, she got very upset because there is a sister piece of legislation that is in the House, and it doesn't have the duty of care clause. That is the issue right there. That's where the mandate is, but they pretend it's not a mandate. I'm so sick and tired of their duplicitous lies and their prevarications, aren't you? When are we going to get somebody who's straightforward and honest with us, who will obey their oath to the Constitution? Where is that person? I don't see any of them out there. So CNBC covers for Marsha Blackburn and her Democrat sponsor Blumenthal. They say, well, it imposes a duty of care on social media platforms so that these companies have to take reasonable care to make sure that they're not creating harm and implementing products that harm kids. Well, that requires an ID, don't you? And so as you look at this, it's running its way through, and Ted Cruz is now jumping in, the senator from Israel. He says, we've now passed COSA again unanimously out of this committee. I'm confident we'll pass it on the Senate floor, and then we'll continue the hard work and negotiations with the House to get over the finish line and into the president's desk. We'll make sure they put that duty of care stuff in there. Yeah, I guess what could go wrong with all this? Well, one of the things that just came out late yesterday, and people are talking about it a lot today, is the fact that the flock camera system has a lot of support from one of the big investors behind it is Andreessen Horowitz behind Flock. They're also behind a company called Toka, Toka. And Haaretz, it's an Israeli company, Haaretz reported that this company Toka, that Andreessen Horowitz is supporting, has the ability to locate, hack, and to alter live as well as archive security camera footage. So not only, this is another reason we got to have the AI. It's not just evidently for going in and bring me the man, I'll find the crime type of surveillance state. But of course, we've seen what deep fake videos can do. They're very good. So you could go in and you could alter a video to make someone who is guilty, I don't know, maybe some Epstein type of people. You could basically go in and alter their videos, or you could alter the video to make somebody look guilty and blackmail them over that. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with that, considering that we've got the Epstein Zionists who are at the center of so many of these things? They already had a blackmail operation going for real. But, it gets a little bit less messy if you don't have to actually have the pedophiles doing anything. You can just frame somebody as being a pedophile. And so it can, again, I'll repeat, it can locate, it can hack, and it can alter both live and archive footage. Why would somebody do that? Well, look where it's coming from. It's coming from Israel. That's why. And so, as I said before, we got a lot of pushback. This is something that, as a matter of fact, Reason Magazine covered this. Now, Reason Magazine, of course, likes data centers because they're run by corporations. That's great. If the censorship is run by corporations, I love it. Corporations can do nothing wrong. And if you've got the censorship on social media and the internet being run by corporations, great. Corporations should be allowed to do that. I just don't want government doing that. They don't see how government and the corporations are allied. They don't see the fascism. The libertarians, Reason, Cato, and so many others are absolutely blind to all of that. And so we just had a short time period ago. Greg Abbott was saying he wanted to make Texas the epicenter of AI, which means that he wanted a lot of data centers there. He just did a reversal. And as Reason says, and they're not happy about this, but I am happy about it, there seems to be very few issues that Republicans and Democrats can agree on these days, but disdain for data centers is sure one of them. And even Greg Abbott got the memo. You are being heard. This is the issue of our time, folks. Right now, this is the issue of the election. If we'd had a referendum as to whether or not government could lock us down before they did with the pandemic, it's just kind of the same type of thing. And yet you can't get people stirred up about this. They do see the issues in terms of the immediate effect if it's in your neighborhood. They do not see the issues of the surveillance network that's being put there. And of course, what Greg Abbott is reacting to is the fact that this is going to bring down the electric grid. And they've already had some issues in Texas when they tried to do the green grift, put in a bunch of solar stuff and windmills, a lot of windmills, and shut down the reliable and cheap coal plants. They started doing that when I moved there in 2012. They were decommissioning them left and right. And they eventually reaped the whirlwind on that. And so now they're looking at the massive amount of expansion. All these people said, okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's go to Texas. They're going to be friendly with us. So they got hit with a big wave of people wanting to move there. And so this is a reaction to it. But we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to join up with Tony Arterburn. He's going to be joining us today. We haven't talked to Tony for a couple of weeks, so it'll be good to talk to him. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Welcome back, and joining us, it's been a couple of weeks now since we've had Tony Arterburn on as Wise Wolf, and so it's good to have Tony back on, and a lot of things, Tony, have happened in the interim. We've had an interest rate non-adjustment coming from the Fed, and the markets reacted to that. We just had a jobs report come out, and even though they lie to us about these labor statistics, like everything else. I mean, they constantly go back. You know they're lying when they go back and change it every single quarter. Well, the revised numbers from the previous quarter are such and such. And so they revive the previous numbers down so they can have a positive trend up with the latest one. So they constantly do that. So I don't believe anything that they're telling us in terms of inflation or jobs. And you had the Federal Reserve leave the interest rates where they are. We've had some other things, too. As you and I were talking about this offline, you mentioned what's going on in Japan, another indication of the issues of fiat currency. And, of course, we're going to back their fiat currency because we've got to keep this illusion going. And then there are things that are happening with gold in Hong Kong. So a lot of Asian news as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're going to bail out of fiat currency with fiat currency. I'm not sure that's going to work. You know, it's funny. It's at this point, I think you just revised the statement to "we know they're lying." I mean, everything, all the metrics. One of the headlines that stuck out to me today, it's you know, again, the mainstream and even the financial sector chase the wrong. I think they chase the wrong headlines. They chase the wrong story. Like, we're 42 days from a strategic meltdown of our petroleum supply.
Yeah.
It's not been this way almost my entire lifetime. Like, even, you know, and you consider how different the world is than it was in the height of the Cold War in the 1980s. And that's the last time that we've had any sort of shortage like we have today on the petroleum side. So I think a lot of these stories, like you mentioned Japan, this is the stuff I'm paying attention to because you know, the financial sector will focus on jobs reports, which I don't really believe, or they'll focus on what the Fed is not doing, which is probably irrelevant at this point. But if you look at stuff like the petroleum issue, the energy sector, the shortages, and then you look at Japan.
Yeah, what's that going to do, Japan, when they import all of their oil?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I just looked this up because I was doing some research last week and I couldn't believe it. I needed to verify it. Japan's debt to GDP is 248%.
Wow.
Which is, it's the highest in any industrialized first world nation. And we're so tied to Japan. I mean, even since the end of World War II, and they set up MacArthur as the viceroy there. I mean, he basically wrote their constitution, but we infused our economic system post-World War II, and we opened up our markets to Japan and Europe after World War II with the free trade agreements and other things. But this is we're entering territory that we've never seen before. And I find that those stories, as we're watching the rest of the world, as I mentioned to you off air, the rest of the world is quietly moving away from the dollar-dominated system, which I think is the biggest story financially of our time. And, you know, the Hong Kong infrastructure that I've mentioned many, many times is online now, where you have a bullion depository, unprecedented size, being constructed and is ready. They're already taking orders in Hong Kong, where if you're a multinational entity or a country, you can park your gold there. So a lot of the gold is moving eastward. Another headline that I thought was really interesting was China has always lied about its gold holdings. That's why I think that, and I'm not alone on this, I think China actually exceeds the United States in their tonnage at this point. It's often referenced that we have over 8,000 tons. Well, we don't know because there's no audit of Fort Knox, which is about half of the gold holdings in the U.S. We don't have any sort of verifiable proof, but the Chinese have been buying ever since George W. Bush gave them most favored nation trading status in 2001 on December 11th, 90 days after 9/11. They've used all the trade surpluses that they gained from that to buy gold. I mean, mostly, and they kept it off the books at the beginning of the century. One of the metrics this last headline was in the last month they said they imported 15 tons, and then the customs report came out and they said no, it's 173 tons. So which one is it? And I think that's what's going on underneath the surface.
Just had a zero there, yeah.
Right. Exactly. I think that's the point of what's happening right now, is that a lot of the headlines are a misdirection as the rest of the world prepares for the new financial world order that's really being constructed right before our eyes, but not in a direct way. We're not really talking about it. And people are myopic, and they're focused on the price of things like gold or silver. And you see, gold is at $42.50 an ounce or something like it was this morning. That's up a couple of $100 in the last week or so. Silver got up a few dollars, $4 or $5. Looking healthy, but if you go back to the beginning of the year, David, it's like, well, silver was at $120 an ounce and gold hit 5,600. So what's wrong with these metals? Nothing's wrong. The entire system is not built off of true economics or true price discovery at this point. I think the real headlines is not really the price; it's the infrastructure. That's what I'm paying attention to.
Well, Trump does like gold. I mean, he's smearing it all over everything in Washington. The Oval Office, he just had gold leaf for millions of dollars put on a couple of statues. The arts of war. He didn't do anything with the arts of peace. He's letting them rot. What a picture that is. But he went out and got 24 karat gold and put it over these old statues from the early 20th century, and doing it all through the Oval Office. Imagine when he looks at this, and he had a lot of rage about the fact that we're out of missiles, and he thought that War Pete had this stuff covered. Imagine the rage when he finds out that we're out of oil.
When he finds out we're out of gold.
Yeah, and out of gold as well.
Already knows that.
Yeah, we got no gold, we got no oil, we got no missiles. What's going on with all of this stuff? And as you point out, we have lost, and thanks to Biden for a lot of this as well. Got to give him credit for what he did with the sanctions for Ukraine. We have lost the petrodollar, but now we're in the process of losing the American empire, the military prestige, and the U.S. hegemony that's there. Everybody is seeing this as not only a tactical, but a strategic failure. And so now everybody is seeing that everybody is looking at the U.S. military and thinking of it now as a paper tiger. I've had a lot of people in the last couple of days pointing out that, yeah, we've had our situations where we didn't do well in war, but it wasn't anything that really made us look weak. This makes us look very weak. And so you start to see all this stuff collapsing, and the fact that he makes the worst investments into Japan, 250%, 250 ratio of GDP to debt to GDP is 250, but it is. And I think he knows that, but he did it anyway. When somebody asked him about that, he starts talking about, well, we made an investment into Intel. And it's like, well, that's nothing to brag about unless you're a fascist or pushing socialism. We don't want the government to own companies. We don't want them to invest in companies. But he brags about that, and he doesn't really address the fact that he said, yeah, well, we're friends with Japan, so we're going to do that with them.
It's interesting. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, as Twain said. And I was reading a history on gold recently, and one of the themes that always struck me was what happened to Rome. And if you look at the Roman model, they kept expanding territory, growing the empire, and they had further and further outstretch of empire. And what they would need to fuel the empire was gold. And so they kept, raiding more and more places, finding gold, and then they would pay these soldiers, these mercenaries, and the gold would flow out east. It would never go back to Rome, and Rome never really made anything. They just consumed a lot. And so the more they consumed, the more that the empire grew, the more gold they needed, the more gold flowed out, because they didn't have a production nation. They had a consumptive nation. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Outstretch of empire. You've outsourced everything. You've even outsourced a lot of the military strength, as we do a lot of times with private contractors and other things now. It's just, mercenaries by another name. But we also use proxies and everything else. But it's the same principle of outsourcing true wealth. And all that wealth flowed out to places like India and China and Persia, which is Iran. It's funny because it's the same themes happening over again. And it's happening in our time. And you're right about the American empire. I thought it was interesting. One of the last gifts that Lindsey Graham left was a real nasty criticism of Trump and his indecision. He just indecisive. He just can't just nuke them all and kill the whole world. I don't know why. He's just. I wish he'd just go ahead and end it all. That's one of his last gifts was, that neocon spirit of let's just blow up everything. And, it makes our nation look not only evil, but cartoonish and laughable. The rest of the world's not taking us seriously because of the decisions we've made. I mean,
yeah, we got that little clip of talking about laughable and cartoonish. I've got that little clip I did of not Lindsey Graham, but of Mark Levin.
I'll fight them to the last American. Die for Israel.
That's our foreign policy right there in a nutshell. It is Looney Tunes, isn't it?
I got to interview Mark Levin when I was over at Freedom 1160s. The radio station is no longer on air out in San Antonio, and they said, "Well, would you interview Levin? He's got a new book out." And I kind of did it when I was funny. I have to pull the audio up. It's one of my first interviews that I did in 2018, 2019. But he had this new book out, and I just opened up the interview and I kind of yelled at him. I was like, "Mark Levin," like I did like that. A great clip of him. Like, well, a lot of people talk about patriotism, Tony, but you're a patriot. I thought it was really nice of him, but we got into like censorship and other stuff that was.
You don't want to put that out there.
No,
don't put out any compliments from Mark Levin. That'll be
never been
death
out there
to your podcast if you do that.
Yeah. But it's okay. I never put the kiss of death on it, but yeah, it's something that I've always found him again cartoonish and that this under the surface, and I've always known it. It's funny how the last really 6 years have just revealed almost everyone, like who they really are, what their priorities really were. How it showed that you talk about a paper tiger. The conservative movement was a farce. I mean, it's not real, It is real, right? It is real. There is no substance to it. And so, again, back to the American empire, though, the resources, the things that we took for granted, that things that were strategic. This goes back to the 90s when they were talking about free trade agreements, and one of the senators was like, it doesn't matter if you make computer chips or potato chips, we'll just import it. And then they found out that it takes 17 countries to make a Patriot missile. Well, you got to import everything. It's
more complicated than a pencil. I mean, they should go back and read Leonard Reed, iPencil. We should do another update on that iMissile.
That's exactly right. Everything, the strategic planning that it takes to have a production nation to be able to project power. Mm-hmm. And, as I mentioned earlier, 20 years ago, David, you know this better than anybody. The argument is that the dollar is propped up by the U.S. military, and that we strategically locate where we do to prop up the petrodollar. Mm-hmm. Well, then it makes no sense what we let the petrodollar agreement lapse. Yeah. We've put no intervention against that. Let it completely implode on itself 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't make any sense. And then we've made all these, you can make a really clear argument now for a controlled demolition of the American empire. My friend Charlie Robinson wrote that book, mm-hmm. Years ago. And it looks to me that's exactly what's happening. I mean,
Tony, it's just 4D chess.
Trust the plan and get your popcorn.
That's right. Yeah.
Patriots in control. I've heard these things. Where have I heard that before? Yeah, it is all 4D chess that someone else is playing against us.
That's right. We're on the losing side of that game. That's absolutely right. Yeah, it's insane what is being done to this country. And you were talking about free trade and tariff. Look at what just happened. We've had, Trump puts in these illegal tariffs, right? And under prevarications using executive orders, and defies anybody to stop him. Congress doesn't stop him. He loses in the Supreme Court. And as they were litigating this, he says, well, we want to keep taking this taking the tariffs while we're litigating this because we think we're going to win. But if we lose, we'll make sure that we hand the stuff back. When they lose, they drag their feet on handing it back, but now they're handing it back. And so what happens? You get these big corporations are getting back billions of dollars, right? $2 billion for Apple and All these giant retailers are getting massive refunds of billions of dollars. Went through that list earlier this week. What do you and I get? Well, these taxpayer foundations have gone through and done the math. They figured it cost per household in the U.S. $1,000 last year and $900 this year. Do we get our $1,900 or $2,000 back? No, but these people get their $2 billion back. And then it gets even worse because you got the Lutnick family basically started selling futures on the stuff. They bet on the fact that these tariffs were going to be overturned. And so they sold insurance policies to people. And so they're going to get a windfall of tens of billions of dollars would go to Howard Lutnick of the Commerce Department of the regime that put in the illegal tariffs in the first place. What a scam this administration is. It's laughable, really. I mean, we look at it. How do we get something this corrupt, this bad, this evil, and you still have people who are defending it? It's just amazing to me.
Well, it's like Warren G. Harding. You had the Teapot Dome scandal, but at least he had the decency to die. I guess at the end of the day. No, but he's that famously said, it's not your enemies, it's your friends. It's your GD friends. That's that famous quote, the president in the 1920s. And then, it is this entire political movement in the last 10 years. If you rewind the tape, it is seriously just the biggest grift. I mean, on both sides, really, but I mean, especially on the Republican side.
And they don't even try to hide it.
No, it's out in the open. I mean, if you look at, I don't know how you live with yourself if, you look at the crypto scam of the Trump administration. You already know if you launch this token, what's going to happen. You already know that it's a pump and dump because it serves no function. There is no functionality of the coin. That's what's wrong with crypto in this space, and I'm a fan of the technology, and I have been for a decade. But the issue is the grifting that goes on, and I think that is where we are. There's a looting of the treasury.
Yeah.
There's a feeling, and you can see it. Like,
where's Bernie when we need him? Remember Bernie Sanders? They're looting the treasury.
Looting the treasury.
When you have a tax cut. This is a literal looting of the treasury, and he's not really saying that much about it.
Yeah, it's looting it, and I think setting up the correct information is not getting to the American people. They're not going to be able to make the right decisions fast enough to avoid the pain of the reset. And I mean, we're inside of that. I call this the Great Reset decade. I think that's exactly where we are. There's a feeling, and you can capture it anywhere if you're paying attention. The public senses something wrong. They just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sensing something slipping away. Something is changing. And I think it starts with the money. At least that's why I focus on it. It starts with the system itself. And that system is being auctioned off. It's being sold right underneath your feet. The entire American system is being sold out or redesigned. And the folks at the top, it's kind of like the insider trading that happened right before 9/11. There's still millions and millions of dollars that are left unclaimed by entities related to Deutsche Bank and other things that had ties to intelligence. Obviously there was prior knowledge to it.
That's a retirement fund.
Probably.
They're not going to touch that. It's like the CIA's version of an IRA, right?
Well, it's history, like Woodward and Bernstein. You go back to the Watergate. There's the one time the press was like activated and then turned right back off. It's really weird how that happened. If you study like the Nixon administration years, it's a strange occurrence. They activated the reporters and then they turned them off again. Nobody ever did that kind of reporting. I bet if you did that now, it would be an unveiling like you've never seen before, because I think we've had corruption in the past, but I think it multiplies every decade here in this country because of our currency system. It's just easier to hide the fraud. If you have to make an accounting for things, then again, harder to hide it. But right now there's no system of accountability anywhere. So, $1 trillion here or $1 trillion there. Sooner or later, you're talking about real money. But that's what's. I think that's.
And whenever Dirksen said that about 50 years ago, it was $1 billion when he was saying that. $1 billion here and $1 billion there. Pretty soon, you're talking about real money. Now it's $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there. It doesn't even get their attention. Even if it's $1 trillion, they don't care about it. Thomas Massey said, 10% of the debt accumulated in the 250-year history of this country will have been incurred in the first half of Trump's second term. Think about that. Just, a year and a half, he's added 10% to the cumulative debt of 250 years. Wow. Pretty amazing. That's also a tale of the devaluation of the currency. When you look at that, of course. I don't know if he calculated it in terms of real dollars. It could be in terms of real dollars, or it could be in terms of the deflated fiat currency.
It's also worth pointing out that adding 10% to the debt would always be a problem. But when the debt is already this monumental, being able to add 10% onto it is insane.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, we got something where you got some small numbers and you got 2 or 3 people and say they've got 2 cases. And all of a sudden they identify another case of the COVID pandemic. Oh, we just had a 50% jump in the cases. But if you got a big number to start with, those percentage numbers are really significant. And that's what we're seeing here right now. So, yeah, it's as a matter of fact, do we have any questions here for Tony in the comments? I was just looking real quickly here. No, we don't right now. Okay, so if you got any questions for Tony, you can put those in there. But yeah, how do we get out of all this? Because, one of the things, yesterday I talked to an Iowa state representative who was trying to get out ahead of all these data centers and flock cameras and everything. And what she kept running into is corruption. You got these people, you see it happening with the CDC and with the FDA and all this stuff. These people who ran the fraud on us, where'd they go? Well, you had one of the head of the FDA went to Pfizer, the other one went to Moderna. And the head of HHS was brought in as the CEO of Eli Lilly. That's what Trump did. So you got this revolving door, and we've seen this type of thing, this type of corruption in Washington all the time. But she pointed out, at a lot of these, at the local level, you got a lot of these positions, and she said, look, if you want to try to stop some of this stuff, a lot of these things are open. Most people don't want to really get involved in it, but it's an opportunity for you to get involved. And she said, what's happening is these are like volunteer positions, some of them not even paid. These people come in and they green light whatever the corporation wants to do, or the data center, or the flock, or whatever. And then they wind up resigning and going to work for that company. That's the kind of corruption. We see that corruption in this country from the lowest local level all the way up to the president. It's just amazing how corrupt this country has become. And it's all about the money and no character.
Reminds me of how so many people involved in the JFK assassination went to work for NASA. It just happened because LBJ put NASA in Houston. So it's interesting that's a lot like this is going on with the local level stuff. And the local is where it's at. If you look at the national races, and you run for Congress, I ran for Congress, I got to see really up close in one of the biggest races that went on in 2014. I was a part of that, and I got to see how it really works. And, if you took the time and money and effort that we put into these, congressional races or Senate races, which I think are already done for. I mean, for the most part, because of things like the 17th Amendment, where you take it out of the hands of the states to represent the states, and you put it in the hands of it's election not by the popular vote, but by bankers. Yeah, that's really what it is at this point.
And the parties control everything. Even if you get elected to Congress, what are you going to do? You can introduce a great bill, and nobody ever gets it to the floor. It never comes up for a vote or even debate.
It's the most, like, even in Texas, one of the most unconstitutional things. Like, if you vote or run in the primary, you can't be a candidate in the general. Like, if you lose the primary, or if you voted in the primary, you can't even get on the ballot in the general election in any party or by yourself, which I don't know how they can constitutionally do that, but that's the way it's set up in Texas. And I think that the locals where it's at, because you look at even the race with Thomas Massey, that was a foregone conclusion in my mind. I thought, they're going to record outspend, but I think it was a good for the American people to see that, because I mean, really, your local sheriff's office, very important on a county level, and there's different. Not only, you're right, for volunteer positions and other things, just being appointed to those type of positions can really help. But yeah, we get so focused on the national, which I think is going to take another party or some sort of real reform You can't change the system inside the system the way it works now. And we just, unfortunately, there's not enough economic pain or incentive for people to try to change that. So I think really the true path to doing anything is on the local level at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Because even if there's some talk that, maybe people like Joe Kent and Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson are going to create a new party. Well, they're going to find out just how controlled this whole thing is. To try to even get on the ballot is absolutely insane. And then good luck trying to get into the debate. Well, they may have enough of a footprint there and enough of an audience they could actually get some attention in this. But I think they're going to find that there are walls erected everywhere to keep them from doing anything, just like there were on the floor of the Congress and the House. You couldn't get, Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene couldn't get anything introduced there, Chip Roy and others. That's why they had those fights over the Speaker of the House. Then we wound up getting Mike Johnson, probably the worst of the lot.
Yeah, he definitely has a weasel written all over him. He's got that look. He's got that feel. I grew up with people like that, and I just know his type well. And it's funny, he talks a great game about being a Christian and does nothing of the things that would emulate Christ's behavior.
That's right.
It really is sad what's happened to like the modern evangelical Christianity, that it surfaces and it looks like Mike Johnson.
Yeah.
And I don't know why people adhere to that. It really, that to me, like warmongering and hiding things and not having transparency, he shuts down debate. He shuts down, any sort of the last bit of discourse. You think about how dumbed down the country's gotten. We used to have great orators, and that used to be a part of our system. Was trying to convince people through speech, live in Congress. Now it's a C-SPAN highlight reel, maybe with 5 people in the chairs.
It's pathetic. I remember when Karen and I went to the UK, one of the things that we wanted to do was to get debate. And we went in and queued up and spent a day so we could go hear questions to the Prime Minister. Margaret Thatcher was there. And I love the kind of back and forth the debate that they have in the UK Parliament. I mean, they're yelling and screaming at each other, and they actually have to think on their feet. Whereas you go to Congress and they've got a prepared speech and they get up there and they read it to the C-SPAN cameras at midnight, and that's what passes for any kind of debate. There is no debate over anything, not just the war, but over anything. They don't have anything debated. I got a question here for you, Tony. This is from Hatchcar61. He said, millions of dollars are going into gold futures with strike prices of between 10 and 20K. Is this the future? No pun intended.
Well, I've not seen that metric where they're listing futures in that range, but I've seen a lot of stuff coming out from some very well balanced researchers and people who target prices just based on analytics. And so the next leg up for gold is supposedly 7,000, which makes total sense. I mean, and people are down on price right now. And they're like, well, it was at mid 5,000s and now it's 4,200. Yeah, well, it was 2,000. A little over 2 years ago. So,
absolutely.
I mean, are we going to $10,000 gold? Yeah, this isn't.
Hold that thought right there, because we've got to take a quick break at the top of the hour, and we will be right back, folks.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Welcome back, folks. And we're just talking to Tony, and we're talking about some big numbers there. When we're talking about futures, we had a listener said, seeing some futures that are prices between 10 and 20,000 for gold. Tony said he hasn't seen those, but he has seen some stuff between 7 and 10. So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of research showing and this is priced into the end of the decade, but between 7 and 10,000. And I think that's been talked about for a few years now, just given every leg up that we have. You have to remember a lot of this stuff is real price discovery based off of demand and central bank buying and all the stuff that I talk about. But if you look at gold, it didn't make an all-time high from 2011 to 2020. There was no a new all-time high for gold, and then finally in 2020, exactly. By the way, exactly today, 6 years ago, it was August 6th. And I was hosting a show. I was in Austin. I was filling in for you, and that's when gold broke 2,000 for the first time. And so every leg up, there would be a little bit of a sell-off and then, price rediscovery. But something crazy happened last year, David. You and I were talking about it all the time. There was just like 38 all-time highs or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just we're in new windows of price discovery. And that was when, gold hit 5,000. So I think that.
You're like Lucille Ball in that skit where the conveyor belt is coming down there with the donuts or whatever it was, trying to keep up with what was happening. It was a crazy time, but
it was a crazy. But the larger point of that was what happened with silver, which took 45 years. And once it broke that, like we're not going to be, it might be temporarily that we have below $50 silver, but those days I think are gone. The new floor is probably what the all-time high was for 45 years. But we're in completely new territory, and you have to understand like the scope of where we are. And maybe I'm not even completely tuned into how big it is, but I think that the monetary reset for the world will reprice all commodities, and I think the dollar pricing will be less relevant 5 years from now than it is today. What I mean by that is denominating something in dollars probably won't be. It's not the future. The future is denominating things based on an ounce of gold.
Yeah, and of course that gives us two paths to seeing $7,000, $10,000, or $20,000 gold. That could either be the collapse of the U.S. currency as well. Who knows what the time frame for that is? Jerry Alatalo has a question for you, Tony. He says, to what extent is Islamic law's prohibition of usury a primary factor leading to the criminal war of aggression against the Iranian people? What do you think about that? Because, we have seen the emails from Hillary Clinton talking about the fact that Muammar Gaddafi in Libya was setting up a gold-backed currency, and they thought that was going to be a threat to their banking system. And that really was, I think, their key beef with them. He'd been very quiet. He had been engaged in terrorist acts and everything back in the 1980s. He got some bombs thrown his way, and he quieted down and really was not much of an actor till they came after him with that.
Yeah, Iran has had the really unfortunate series of decisions of not to, take part in the acid of modernity. They don't want a lot of the things that are killing our country. And I don't agree with their theocracy or their politics or anything like that. But they've rejected the international central banking cartel for the most part. Funny how Iraq did that too. Iraq also did that and rejected it.
And Russia.
Russia. That's why Russia is always the boogeyman.
Yeah.
It is interesting that you mentioned that, but there's several factors. It's not just that puts Iran in the crosshairs. Tucker Carlson had a great piece the other day, or a little segment where he said, the Israelis want chaos in the regions, which I've been saying for years. It's not. There is no goal. There's no regime change. It's not about that. It's just instability all the time.
Yeah.
And
if they can burn down the Gulf states, and they can go in and take control, even if it's just, everybody's going to route their pipelines to Israel now. That's one aspect of it. But if they can burn down all these countries, if they can get them to attack each other, then they've already got, they don't have to use their own bombs to create a Gaza.
That's right. And this has been the goal for many years. You can go back to when Israel unilaterally took out Iraq's nuclear energy facility back in the early 80s called Osiris. They just hit it with they bought an F-16 from us and used that to fly over and just bomb this thing independently. And the cascading series of events that happened all throughout the 80s and then bringing us to where we are now in the Middle East, you can just clearly see the want for chaos, or the want for just instability for the sake of it. It's not really about terrorism or anything like that, or guarding against it. It's just the power in the region. So that's another issue that Iran has with us because we act on behalf, our government now acts on behalf of the Israeli government.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty clear. I mean, we make decisions. Even Marco Rubio admitted that we have to do something because if not, they're going to do it. You know, they'll hit it harder. So we have this, you know.
Well, and of course, you know, the last time we had one of these major oil embargo issues, it was because of the blessing of our closest ally, Israel, as Jonathan Pollard has gone on one podcast after the other, bragging about the fact that the U.S. was blackmailed by Israel. They said, take a look at this plane, he said, and look at the quote-unquote unconventional weapons on it. That's what he said. He wouldn't say it was nuclear, but he was strongly implying it. And he said, yeah, we're going to use this against Egypt if you don't give us the arms that we want, because the U.S. didn't want to get involved in that 1973 war. And they said, you'll give us those weapons or we will nuke Egypt. And so we did. And then what did we get in return? We got the Arab oil embargo. And that Arab oil embargo of 1973 was only directed against the United States. It wasn't a global embargo like Trump's embargo based on this war. And at the time, it was only 15% of our oil supply, 15% of the U.S.'s oil supply. Although we were the biggest consumer at the time because of manufacturing, it was only 15% of our oil, and yet that percolated throughout the world and created a global economic issue. That was the inflation that ran through and that resulted in the rapid escalation of gold after a few years. But that all began because of Israel and the instability there in the Middle East, and now we're doing it all again. Like you said, I think it is a planned thing. I don't think that's stupid. I like what you say. He said if it was an accident, if it's just stupidity, every once in a while they would make the right decision, but they never make the right decision.
That's old James Forrestal quote. You know, he was pushed out of a window at Bethesda Naval Hospital for a speak. That's what I believe. You know, they said he jumped out, but he was our first Secretary of Defense, and no, we don't have those anymore. We went back to Secretaries of War. But you're right. We have this radioactive albatross around our neck, which is, you know, the Israeli lobby and their interests. You know, they do a really good job going after what they believe are their own national interests. And that's not the way our politics work anymore. You know, people don't want this war. We didn't have to have it. It's unnecessary. We could have done a million different things, but we chose this path, and now we're being humiliated. I don't think that is just sheer stupidity. I think that we're supposed to see that. I think people need to be in a state of fear, uncertainty. I think that's the way they want it, because you can push through a lot of things. You know, a lot of stuff can happen under the surface if you're really myopically focused on something that you can't control. So I think that's anytime these headlines are going on, David, my first reaction is, what else is happening? You know, like,
when you look at the official story about 9/11, right? It was the Saudis who did it, right? Well, I don't believe that's the case. They may have had a hand in it, but I believe it was ultimately the U.S. and Israel that did it. But when you look at the fact that the official story is that the Saudis did it, what did we do? We just gave them the permission to have a nuclear weapon. How does that help anything? How does that stabilize the area? Of course, if all the Arab states get nuclear weapons, they certainly don't need the U.S. around anymore. And yet the people that they want to tell you did 9/11, now they want to give them nuclear weapons. They can't even keep their story straight. This is like the pandemic, you know. Well, the vaccine, you got to have the vaccine. Even if you've had the disease, your natural immunity doesn't work. You got to get the vaccine to train your immune system. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like that's another tell. Like, we're abandoning the wisdom. Like, and a lot of our, you know, our ancestors and people who set up, even just recent ancestors, the ones who fought the Cold War, they got some stuff wrong. You know, they got the domino theory wrong. You know, you look at that McNamara documentary, The Fog of War. I thought that was really interesting, where he has these realizations, how wrong he actually was by meeting the people that he was trying to kill. You know, like that was something that it dawned on him that he didn't know his history, or just didn't understand it. And so they got some things wrong. One of the things they got right, though, David, was being against nuclear proliferation. And I think JFK lost his life in part of, you know, not wanting the Israelis to have the bomb, or just pushing for peace in general. I think that was a real, like, we got to take out this guy because he really means it. It's just you know, I think another tell. But yeah, they were against nuclear proliferation. Even Reagan sitting down with Gorbachev, and I really think Reagan believed this. He wanted to get rid of all nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Like he was all about building up the arms race and Star Wars and called SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiatives. Like that was a real thing. But he also mentions in public and in private to Gorbachev, he wanted to get rid of all nuclear weapons. Now we have this president who's like, it's going to be the biggest bomb. We're going to make the bigger ones. I just, it's bizarre, and we're going to arm other people. And isn't the whole point of this war that we're going to stop Iran from getting the bomb or whatever
That's right. So instead we give it to Saudi Arabia, the people who you chop off the head and chop into little tiny pieces any dissident journalists that they've got there, and we'll talk about many of the other things that happened in Saudi Arabia. I don't think that they were behind 9/11 by any means, but certainly it's not the kind of regime that I would like to see have a nuclear weapon. And there was a lot of consternation with the Zionist-occupied government about the fact that Pakistan had a bomb. They didn't like that at all. Now we're just going to let all of them have a bomb. Everybody in the region is going to have a bomb. That's just insanity. And yet we've got to stop Iran, but we arm every other Arab state in the area.
That is true. We definitely don't have a coherent policy at this point. I think that's clear to everyone who's paying attention. It's just chaos for the sake of chaos, which I think is the order of the day. You got to figure out what that means for you, like in an individual level. How does it affect you? And war game that out. That's what I try to do.
That's right. That's why we talk about gold so much here, because I've said for the longest time, I said, look, we got a time frame. They're going to exploit the natural rhythm of societies that Strauss and Howe talked about in the fourth turning. They said in the early 1990s, they said sometime in the mid-2000s, there's going to be some kind of an economic catastrophe that's going to set off the fourth turning. And typically they have war. It always has an economic component to it, but usually there's also war. But it comes about every 80 years, about every 4 generations. That's why they call it the fourth turning, because people lose faith in their institutions. They see that things are not working correctly. There's a lot of corruption, calcification, and things like that. So they start to clean house. And usually that gets accelerated because of an economic situation, but frequently it goes into war. Our last fourth turning was the Great Depression and World War II. Prior to that, the Civil War. Prior to that, the American Revolution. So when we look at this, they said, well, sometime in the mid-2000s, and it'll probably be finished by 2029. And when you look at the global goals, the Agenda 2030, and we're going to have the smart cities by 2030 and all the rest of this stuff. And I said, we're going to have, in just the next couple of years, things are really going to accelerate. And I think we're seeing that right now. The rapid pace of change, constantly throwing one thing at us after the other. And of course, Trump is a master at doing that. And that's why I think he was picked by the Rothschilds to do this. And I think that he is heavily involved with the Rothschilds. When you look at Wilbur Ross, his first Commerce Secretary, he was there. Trump was indebted to the Rothschilds, and they show up for one of his bankruptcy things. And Wilbur Ross said publicly, he said, saw the big entourage of people that are interviewing him, and now he was handling them. And he said, I called, the Home Office or whoever he calls, and he said, I think we can use this guy, So they made deals with him. And he is the perfect guy if you want to accelerate the chaos, accelerate the change, get this all done, have the Great Reset, and start building your global government. He is the perfect guy to do it. Just look at what the person who is in the office of the presidency can do in terms of creating global chaos, economic chaos. I mean, he begins with all these tariffs and everything, and now we got wars that are happening. He is the one-man fourth turning machine, isn't he?
Yeah, and they also, I think the powers that be also needed something to bastardize and completely upend the nationalist movement or traditional paleocon libertarian fusion that Pat Buchanan had. I thought was just and it's what I ran on. I mean, this is prior to Trump. It's something I thought this is the future, because I could feel it. You talk to people, it was bowling underneath the surface, and I think they took that, redirected it, and just made it inert. I think now it's a farce, it's a joke, it's a funhouse mirror version of itself. It's cartoonish, it's caricature.
You're 100% right. Yeah, just take a look at 2020. The people who normally would have pushed back hard on this, I mean, the left loved it. Like, oh, yeah, tell us what to do. You want us to wear masks? Well, wear far, and so they were really into all this. But the people who didn't like it who pushed back against it, even most of them would try to excuse Trump. So they put Trump in there, created a personality cult around him. So they created cognitive dissonance for the very people who would oppose this approach. And the same thing is happening now. We got the police state and the surveillance state being rolled out by a bunch of Republicans.
It really is sad to watch, David. This is something we're going to have to contend with, because now we have a fractured thing. We mentioned earlier, it's a fractioned grassroots, even if there is whatever that means anymore. You've got Tucker Carlson talking about a third party. It's because all the usual avenues and everything, like Sisyphus, we rolled the rock up the hill and have it roll back on us, for eternity. I mean, we're just doing this over and over again, and something has to give. And I think economic issues will be the catalyst for change in the country. Unfortunately, you have to feel the consequences of a lot of compounding bad decisions.
Even when you look at the pushback against AI and surveillance stuff, it really is economic issues that get people's attention, right? That and the noise and all the rest of this stuff. But we're going to have to, to have a grassroots movement, we got to get people to stop smoking the grass of MAGA.
It's really future historians, hopefully, is their future. Well, I have a field day, with the cult of MAGA and everything that happened, and I mean, start to finish, it's been a bizarre story. But the unfortunate casualties have been the American people, and our natural, I think, progression leading up to where we were in 2016, which was right underneath the surface, a true nationalist movement or a true pushback against the establishment, which they captured that and that fulcrum of Trump and other things, and then just wasted it. I mean, think about all the policies that we didn't get to implement, how great they would have been. I mean, truly, country. And unfortunately, you and I we're doing the postmortem, and it's not popular. I don't know. It cost me a broadcasting career. Well, I like one I have, but I was like, oh, that's not even real. And people just get so mad at me. And then, years later, I'm right, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. And, there was an article that I saw talking about the people who push back against the lies about vaccines and lies about the pandemic and all the rest of this stuff, and how they were punished, right? Doctors who said, well, maybe let's try this. I've tried this and it seems to work against this respiratory illness out there, regardless of what it is. But they said now the people who are right about things are not getting their positions back. They're not getting their jobs back. They're not getting their audience back, right? Which is what, the issue that we see here. I took it on the chin for opposing Trump throughout 2020 and opposing him through the January the 6th stuff. I was right about all that stuff, but just like the people who are right about the medical aspects of it, and I talked about the same things myself, you don't get it back. It's gone. And there is no, oh, I'm sorry, you were right. Let's pay attention to the people who are right. Instead, they're still paying attention to the people who played them. And that is the most amazing thing, the most galling thing about all this stuff. And that's something the historians need to talk about. Hey, future, I'm talking to you. You need to pay attention to how this whole thing played out and how the people didn't really catch on ever, it seems like.
Yeah. I think Gore Vidal said that we were the United States of amnesia. I think it really makes sense.
That's a good quote. I like that. Yeah, well, thank you for joining us, Tony. And again, folks, you can get to Wise Wolf Gold by going to davidknight.gold. Let Tony know that you came through us. And one of the things I was talking about is the fact that with all of this stuff that is changing, right? What do you want to have, at least in your financial aspect? You need to have something that's solid, that's going to be there. That's physical gold, and Tony can help you get that on a regular basis. You can sign up for Wolfpack. It's a great way to gradually accumulate and to dollar cost average and get some of your fiat currency into something that is real. And, of course, he can also handle any kind of metal IRAs, or he can help you with any purchase of gold or silver, regardless of the amount. But what I really like is the Wolfpack thing, which allows you to do that on a regular basis. Thank you so much, Tony. Appreciate you coming on. Been a great friend of the program. And you've been right from the start on this stuff, and you still are, I think.
Appreciate you, sir. Always
a
pleasure.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we'll be right back.
Here's a little song I wrote. You might want to hear it in your pod. You'll owe nothing and be happy. got no cash, ain't got no car, but 24 booster shots in your arm. Oh, nothing. Be happy. You can't even buy shit in the store because of your low social credit score. Oh, nothing. Be happy. You'll own nothing. And be happy. Be happy and eat the bugs.
July of 1896, exactly 130 years ago, I warned this great nation of the government's plan to crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. Of course, that was before they started to bleed us dry with the death of 1,000 fiat paper cuts. But after you bought every single commemorative David Knight Show coin in gold color, the podcast's gold reserves are depleted. They issued 100 numbered gold-colored coins and declared the mint closed. The people cried out, "Free silver!" Well, the likes of J.P. Morgan can't stop this all-new commemorative coin. Now in silver color, while supplies last, this commemorative coin does not contain precious metal, but does keep the show on the air. Equal to the gold color, this limited run is numbered 1 to 100. Get yours today at thedavidknightshow.com. Hurry, because supplies are disappearing quicker than the purchasing power of the dollar.
And that's saying something, isn't it? Well, I was just talking about how Greg Abbott has switched. Of course, he's not switching because he supports freedom and dignity or the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. No, he's switching because I don't know what we're going to do about this electricity thing. Remember, we had to shut down electricity. We were worried about anything that generated heat. But now none of that matters. They just flip the switch on the MacGuffin and it all goes away, doesn't it? And so what they're focused on, and this is why they're rolling the climate MacGuffin into the background for now, is because they have to set up their surveillance system. That is the key thing. And when you go back and you look at even when they were pushing climate change as a motivating MacGuffin, when they were pushing the pandemic, of course, they got to have an ID to track you and to give you permission and to look at how much you are consuming in terms of energy. Now they're just going straight for the identification and straight for the geospatial intelligence, tracking everybody everywhere. A Senate bill. I just talked about how COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, was pushed out by Marsha Blackburn, how they faked it. They said, well, we're not going to have any mandated IDs in here. We're not evil, right? No, instead what they'll do is put a duty of care, and they will bully the corporations into doing a mandated ID. But now there's another bill, also with bipartisan support, a Senate bill that would put age checks on every U.S. operating system. We've already seen this introduced in California. And now they want to do this on a national basis, the Digital Age Assurance Act. Think about this, the digital age. Yeah, this is really what Zbigniew Brzezinski called the technocratic age, right? The technocracy age, where they get a number for each and every one of you, and me included. We all have to have that mark of the beast, the mark of the government. And so this is being supported by Cynthia Loomis, who has been there from the very beginning on cryptocurrency, pushing that, Adam Schiff and John Barrasso. And what they are doing is trying to take the California age law and make it the national standard. What would it do? It would propose it would make operating systems unusable without an account. And the account would require the user to indicate the date of birth and the age of the user. And of course, that has to be verified, which means, of course, that everybody has to have an ID to use a browser, to use the internet. A covered device would be any computer, any mobile device, or any other general purpose computing device, so the equipment would reach practically everything. Think about that. They'll probably include, with that kind of a definition, it's so broad, it'll probably include cars, because cars have got computers in them as well now. Some websites would be included in this as well. A covered internet website is one that is already required under federal state law to verify the age of a user. So this is something that began in California. Now you have Republicans and Democrats trying to make this the national standard. And this will apply to websites, it'll apply to operating systems, it'll apply to applications. And if you don't do this, they will shut you down. So they basically want to shut down any individuals who are going to make any software as well. Anonymous speech and anonymous reading are both protected, and this bill installs a declared age checkpoint under both, all baked into the operating system. Adults would get bracketed too, as the architecture has to be built for the entire population in order to sort out the minors, who are a minority. So yeah, you cannot protect the minors based on age unless you get an age on everybody. The Senate bill, interestingly enough, is going to create a little bit, they changed the California bill in the sense that the California bill looked to people who were 18 or older. Interestingly enough, the Senate bill stops at age 17 and older, which files 17-year-olds in with adults. Most state access laws draw their line at 18. So why are they doing this at 17? Isn't that interesting? Because I don't know of any states that have 17 as the age of consent, as the age of being able to drink, to drive, and to not have statutory rape. The federal signal cannot distinguish a 17-year-old from an adult, and a covered website complying with the 18-plus mandate would receive a signal that does not give it enough information to comply with the law. So it'll need something additional, something that'll route back to another ID check verification. You see how they're doing this incrementally? You know, they first, Marcia comes out and says, well, we don't have any direct mandates for age collection. Then they come out with one that has a direct age mandate. But then they put it in there ambiguously saying, well, we've identified this person as 17, but you don't know if this person is 17 or 18, if they're a legal adult, and in some states it's going to be age of 21. So now we got to get a little bit more information about you. It just keeps incrementing, doesn't it? The fines go from $2,500 for each negligent violation to $7,500 for each intentional one, multiplied by the number of children supposedly affected by all this. And so we know where all this stuff leads. And when we look at where this is going, even at the local level in this area, the guy that shot the 4 flock cameras who was running for Congress, he shot them in, I believe, in the Maryville area. And in Maryville, they are really doubling down on these things, and it's not just the ones on the poles. So you might want to start practicing for skeet shooting because they're going to be flying at you now next. And they have, they're talking about making a major investment in Maryville for these, as well as there has been a major investment in Knoxville, where Glenn Jacobs, who has spoken against these things, he's there, they okayed $9.5 million. And these are going to be annual costs that the taxpayers are going to have to bear. Where is the justification for any of this stuff? We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we will be right back. Stay with us.
World order in music.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the unvaccinated are still alive. A little bit of Pfizer in my arm. A little bit of BioNTech does no harm. A little Johnson Johnson does the trick. A little AstraZeneca so you don't get sick. It's booster number 5.
analyzing the globalists' next move. And now, the David Knight Show.
Well, we've had people who are investigating this developing surveillance network. They noticed that in the small town of Maryville, they're starting to put together a regional drone as first responder network. And what this means is the flying drones that are going to basically, it'll be a flying flock. As I said before, I look at it as like a flock of ravens, and it always reminds me of the birds from Alfred Hitchcock, where she's coming out and they're starting to accumulate one by one. And then they attack after they get to a sufficient number. What it's going to cost this small town is anywhere between $300,000 and $600,000 per year. They're going to do it. I don't know how much the initial purchase costs, but in nearby Knoxville, which is only 16 miles away, they've already spent $9.5 million in January of this year. What did they get for that? Well, they got 12 drones and 12 docking stations and a real-time information center. And of course, folks, look, this is all to make you safe, says Marsha Blackburn and the GOP. No, it is not. It is not to make you safe. This is not just a drone either. It is the first layer in a full spectrum surveillance stack, the one that reaches over fences and into backyards without a warrant and without any residents knowing about this. So $9.5 million in Knoxville, got $600,000 a year in Maryville proposal. In Tennessee, they just got rid of the requirement for a warrant whenever you're using a drone to surveil somebody. They got rid of that in 2024. Interesting how they do these things in progression, isn't it? It's almost like there's a plan or something, and they're following a script. And this is not something that is just limited to Tennessee. There are over 1,500 drone programs throughout the United States. This is coming to an area near you if it's not there already. And when it is promoted by Flock, they promote this as the next era of policing starts now. Yeah, that's true. And I don't believe that it's an era. I believe it's an error. ERROR. It is a severe error to turn our police into something like this. A dedicated pilot comes along with this at 40 hours a week, provided during the rollout period. An estimated annual cost will range in $300,000 to $600,000 a year for the regional concept. Proposed coverage of schools, neighborhoods, major roadways, and residential areas in the Maryville and Alcoa region. And again, this is no longer theoretical. In January 2026, the Knoxville City Council voted 8-1. It's almost unanimous. It's not even close. I mean, you're going to have to change out the entire city council there in Knoxville, folks, to get this done. So they voted to bring that in. They don't care how much it's going to cost. They have allocated nearly $37 million for this kind of surveillance stuff through 2035 in Knoxville. So they've got a template. It's been funded. It's operational. You had their representatives in the state legislature prepared this ahead of time. And as they point out in this statement, this is actually from MaryvillePrivacy.org, and I would suggest that you don't have to be in Maryville. You don't have to be in Tennessee to learn something from MaryvillePrivacy.org, because they laid this out. And this same tactic, this template that's being done, is being done in every state, every city. They're running this type of thing. So you need to take a look at the deep research that they've done at this site. It's excellent. And thank you to the listener who sent this to me. I'm sorry I didn't put your name down on here, and I've forgotten who it is. But as they point out, the pattern is money first, policy later. That in and of itself would be bad enough, but we know where this is happening. And that's one of the things that Glenn Jacobs, who is the mayor of Knoxville, said we need to, and the county mayor of Knoxville, he said we need to put a moratorium on this stuff until we figure out how we're going to control it. I say just ban it flat out. That's where I disagree. But, the idea that you would just run into this stuff, give them the money, and we'll figure out the details later. We got to have this thing. We got to keep up with everybody else. Got to keep up with China. China's got a great totalitarian state. Why can't we have that as well here in the United States? Technology and spending come before any written policies, come before any retention rules, and come before any public oversight. And again, we always ask, who watches the watchers? Who polices the police? Well, unfortunately, folks, that's you and I. Nobody else is going to do it. And so when they put this thing in, one of the things that I thought was interesting about this, I'd not seen before, and that is that they have a flock ghost vehicle that is on a white list. Think about it. You get somebody on a black list. That means, this person, stop them whenever, right? Block them from flying, block them from buying guns or whatever. That's a blacklist. A white list means that you are on a special do not bother these people. And they have 3 of these license plates that they have put on with no expiration, telling the flock cameras, if you see this license plate, don't report it. Don't track it. This is a ghost vehicle. Isn't that an interesting thing? This is, of course, nobody would ever use one of these things for a crime, right? I'm sure that nobody like Jeffrey Epstein would use it to escort people to his house or anything, right? So the drones are categorically different from the fixed cameras. They can hover over any location. They can follow a person. They can look over a fence and into a yard. They can cover areas that were never designated for camera coverage. They can reach any point in the coverage area in 60 to 90 seconds. And the pilot controls what is being filmed. Residents cannot know when a drone is overhead or what it is filming. Again, filming it without you knowing it and filming it without a warrant. This is where we're going, folks, and this is what they're paying. When you hear them complain about the fact that they need more money for whatever it is that they're doing, in most cases it's for something we don't want, like the schools. Whenever you hear them complaining about that, just think about how much money they're spending. $37 million in Knoxville to just go for the next 5 years or so. And so again, what do we ask these people to try to find out about what is going on in your area? Is there any drone program currently being pursued? And what phase is it in? So if you go to one of these city council meetings, that's the first question that you would want to ask them. What written policy would govern the flight authorization, the recording retention, and public reporting before any contract is signed? Again, this is something that everybody in every state and locality needs to ask their elected representatives. Go to one of these meetings and ask them about this. Will drone footage be shared with Knoxville or with any regional data network? What is the estimated annual cost? What would trigger an expansion of this? Will the public meetings be held before any contract is approved? Given Tennessee's warrantless drone law, what additional local protections does the city intend to put in writing? Are you going to require people to have a search warrant according to the Constitution, since that's been overthrown at the state level? This is very important that you ask these types of questions. And of course, they want to hide all that from us. The Republicans are talking about AI surveillance pricing, and they're not talking about the expensive pricing of the systems that are going to be used to enslave us, millions of dollars for these things. No, they're not talking about that. They're talking about the fact that AI is going to know who you are when you go into some of these stores. And since they know who you are, they might charge you a higher price. Well, there's a lot of different ways that this could be abused, as a matter of fact. Here's a report. This is a woman who got fired from Burger King. I mean, don't think that this is something that they just apply to the people at the top of the economic ladder. She's working at Burger King as a clerk. And a guy comes in and she says, "Hi, where are you from?" And she says just small talk that she would ask the people. He goes, "I'm from Israel." And she said, "Oh, well, free Palestine," right? That's it. He got her fired.
Ariana, what did you say to me? What did you say to me, Ariana? Okay, Ariana. Say it again. I got you, Ariana. Here at Burger King. No problem.
So back in the car right now, obviously very upset, but we asked for a refund and we left the place, leaving me with the question, Burger King, are you a safe place for Jews right now?
Hello, everybody. My name's Ariana.
Are we safe from Jews who want to take away our free speech? No. America is not a safe place for the First Amendment.
Side of the story. I'm going to keep it real short and simple. That man did come in very aggressively. I did not ask him where he was from, originated from. I asked him, where is he from the Lehigh Valley? We get a lot of people from a lot of different places, New York, New Jersey, as he didn't say in the video, he did originally said he was from New Jersey, and we stopped it at that. And so he took out the Star David from his shirt and said, I'm Israeli, I'm from Israel, and that is what got me to say Free Palestine. Absolutely, I wasn't going to back down on Free Palestine when he put the camera in my face. That's just not somebody I am. I will forever speak on my views, and I will never be scared to say what I think. I just wanted to say my whole point of saying Free Palestine was not to spread hate, because the reason I was fired was because I discriminated against him and I had said hate speech. That is not what I wanted to give out. That was not my intention. My intention was to speak on my views, because absolutely I say Free Palestine, Free Gaza, stop the genocide. Because what's going on right now is more than any of us could imagine.
What about if we just say Free America, right? We're not allowed to say that. We're not allowed to say it's a free country anymore, right? We don't have free speech because of the Israelis, because of fake Israel. They will censor and take away your job. So what are they going to do with this surveillance pricing? So if you get on their list, they already brag about how they can take your job, they can end your career, they can debank you, they can keep you from coming into the country, right? If you're at the upper level. What about if you're a lower level person like Ariana? She loses her job, and then next thing she finds is that when she goes into these stores, maybe they charge her double because she had the audacity to support life and liberty for people who are being attacked by a criminal country, Israel. You're not allowed to say F Israel, as a matter of fact. If you're looking at the at AI, this is a good example. Somebody says, well, create me an image that says, we'll just say F Israel. This is not about free Israel. It's the other four-letter F word, right? What if we make an image where we got a crowd here holding up a sign that says F Israel? So sorry, I can't do that. Well, can you create an image that says F the United States and say, sure, here it is. What's going on with that? It's exactly the same thing. We're seeing this over and over again. And this guy, this snowflake, this is the same play, folks, that the Bolsheviks who've taken over our universities and other institutions, the same thing that they have used in terms of the LGBT and all the rest of these things. Well, it's a hate speech if you don't support where I am, right? Where have we seen that before? That's a Bolshevik tactic. It's a communist tactic. It's not enough to just let everything go and to say live and let live. No, that's not allowed. You have to not only tolerate what I do, but you got to celebrate what I do. And you better not celebrate something that I don't like, because if you celebrate something I don't like, I'm going to come after you. You're going to lose your job. Maybe everything's going to be doubled in terms of price for you. That's really what we're seeing from these people. Well, before we run out of time, I want to talk about what's going on with the vaccine stuff and also with the lab leak. We have Jonathan Turley saying, this is going to surprise some people. He said a leading Biden pandemic figure has now embraced the lab leak theory. Well, guess what? That doesn't surprise me at all, because this is the way they all get out of jail for free. It is the lab alibi. I guess we could just call it the lababi, right? They've all got a lababi. If we have, it happened at the lab. No. The monster is the jab. If you tell people it happened at the lab, then, okay, maybe it was just an accident. And even if it was deliberate, it wasn't Americans. It was the Chinese who did it. Lets them all have a get out of jail free card. It is the lababi that they've got. He says, I commend this guy for publicly addressing his change. Indeed, everyone in academia, myself included, have seen their views evolve. Well, really, this is when you look at what is happening with all this stuff. We just had Erica Schwartz confirmed at the CDC as the head of the CDC. And this is after 50 out of 53 GOP senators supported her, and she was Trump's pick. And why do I say that this is a bad thing? Because she told everybody in the confirmation hearings, she said, no, mRNA vaccines are safe and effective. They're not either. They're not either one of those things. And the government under Trump's so-called MAHA has now approved an mRNA flu shot, as if the flu shot wasn't bad enough and ineffective enough. They have now approved an mRNA flu shot. So she goes to the confirmation hearings after being picked by Donald Trump. And what does she push? She pushes the mRNA jab. Yeah, Trump pretending that he's not with Fauci, trying to use Fauci as a scapegoat. The very first thing that Trump did when he came in his second term was to push mRNA vaccines and to push them in combination with AI. So Trump's people keep pushing mRNA, and the Biden people are now supporting the lab alibi, the lababi. So how do we have a choice between these two people? It seems like they're all on exactly the same page, aren't they? It's almost like there's a conspiracy. Despite the vindication of scientists, says Jonathan Turley, on their opposition to policies and on their opposition to the use of surgical masks, the closure of schools, and other issues, there haven't been any repercussions for those who enforced this or for the intolerance during the pandemic. And again, that applies not just to the people who lost their jobs as, whether they got fired because of a company they work for, or because they're in the military, or because they took their license away from them because they were in medical facilities. It also applies to people who are in the media. And they're still selling garbage that's not quite there. And that is the situation with this Turley thing. Only those who oppose the lies, only those who oppose the mandates were punished. And the lying people, the tyrants, are now unpunished. They're still in power. They're still using their lababi to do this all again. And you still have these people who stood by and didn't say anything or cheered it, and they are still have the biggest audiences out there. How does anybody support somebody who cheered this stuff? Somebody like Alex Jones, for example, trying to reinvent himself. But the reality is that he cheered this stuff. He pushed the idea that the pandemic was real. He pushed the idea that the vaccines were not real. They were sugar water that was created by Donald Trump. Don't worry about that. Yeah, it's going to have some aluminum and other things like that. He told people were very harmful, and they are. But don't worry about it. It's just basically sugar water. Well, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny addressed something else about this, because remember that she didn't just push mRNA jabs, but she also stood firmly behind the entire childhood vaccine schedule.
The most invaluable commodity in the country is a newborn child. Vaccines are the economic driver of the entire system, because if they can start with four vaccines, sometimes 5 vaccines given to pregnant women now, and 3 more vaccines given immediately after birth, and 7 vaccines given at 2, 4 each at 2, 4, and 6 months, children now get 28 jabs by the time they're 1 year of age. They have become a customer for life.
That's right. You make them sick, and now that's what we want. We want sick people because they become customers for us. She calls it the pediatric poisoning schedule, and she's absolutely right. Now, you look at this person that Trump has put in as the head of the CDC, Erica Schwartz. Not only is she 100% behind mRNA and the childhood poisoning schedule, but she also cashed in on all this stuff as she left public service. She went to work for United Health. And what do we know about United Health? Well, one of the reasons that it was singled out by this guy, the CEO was singled out by Mario, I forget what his last name is, but the guy who was standing trial for shooting him, one of the reasons that it was singled out was because it is the largest insurance company, and it is the insurance company that by far and away has the largest denial of payments for anybody when they need to have medical care taken. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at corruption. We're looking at people who don't care about your informed consent. And this, in terms of what I've said before, I always thought that Maha was a joke. It should be written as haha. because the joke is on us. Meanwhile, in West Virginia, schools are rejecting religious vaccine exemptions. This is something that was put in by the governor. He put it in an executive order, and the department, the school board, I should say, not a Department of Education, but the school board, said, well, we're not going to honor that. We're going to require you to get the vaccine schedule done to your kids before they can go to school. Well, ultimately, that might be a silver lining for some people, but we're seeing it happening in New York as well, even worse in many ways, what they are doing to the Amish.
The poor Amish, what happened?
Yeah, the poor Amish, they've been fighting for years, like so many others have, against these tyrannical government mandates. What happened is 3 Amish community schools were heavily fined by the state of New York, and I think it was to the tune of like over $150,000 in total, and maybe counting, still going up, because they continued. Here was their crime. They continued to accept religious exemptions after the state had eliminated them. So these are Amish community schools. Obviously, they have their own religious beliefs. They did not believe in forcing children to be vaccinated. And so they allowed religious exemptions for their students, for their families. Sounds reasonable, right? Mm-hmm. It's a religious school, after all, right? But the state said, no, we abolished religious exemptions for everyone. Public schools.
Is this a public or private school that they're going to?
So the Amish community schools, as I understand it, would be considered private schools. They're not set up by towns. They're not publicly funded in that way. I don't know if they receive any public funding. But New York, just like California and Connecticut and Maine, eliminated religious exemptions as to all schools, not just public schools. Public, private, parochial, anything. They eliminated religious exemptions, which, of course, we don't believe here at We the Patriots USA, or most attorneys who know anything about the First Amendment don't believe that that's legal. Right?
So isn't that interesting? The argument is that, well, if we deny religious freedom to everybody, then we haven't violated your religious freedom. That's basically what the argument is. That's what the argument that New York is making. Now, in West Virginia, you had a governor, Patrick Massey, who's a Republican. He tried to change this policy of vaccine mandates in the state of West Virginia, and he put in an executive order. And then you had the West Virginia Board of Education said, well, we're not going to obey that. We have a law from the legislature, and unless they change the law at the legislature, we're not going to sway from our requirement of the full vaccine schedule. You got to get measles, meningitis, hepatitis B, chickenpox, mumps, diphtheria, polio, rubella, tetanus, and whooping cough, all those things. Maybe get them all at once, especially if you'd like to have an autistic child. That's exactly what we saw here in Tennessee. They had a custody battle. The kids had not been vaccinated. The judge was pro-vaccine, said, I'll give custody of the kids to whoever will get them vaccinated right away. The mother took the kids, got the custody, got them vaccinated all at once with catch-up vaccines. And the 2 boys immediately went into intensive care and were in intensive care in terms of their vaccine reaction for several days. One of them was in much longer. And now, after he gets out, he is severely autistic, so autistic that he is in diapers. He can't do anything. And it was all done by these vaccines that they have here. But this is the government taking away your informed consent, taking away your religious freedom, taking away your free speech. Can't say anything about Israel. We're seeing this happening everywhere. And the infrastructure that's going to put all this stuff in is being built at your expense by the Republicans who say that they support the Constitution, support the family. Nothing could be further from the truth. Well, just another source of information, the John Birch Society has a Save Our Children Action Project, encouraging parents to withdraw their children from government schools, to urge their faith leaders to oppose public education, to work toward ending the government school system. The Freedom is the Cure Action Project similarly promotes medical freedom and resistance to coercive government mandates. The New American is the publication for the John Birch Society, and I heartily support the John Birch Society. Appreciate what they do in terms of giving you a score for state legislators as well as congressional legislators and all the elected officials. So that takes it down to the local level. It's a great resource take a look at that. And I've got a comment and a tip here. Thank you. Stealth Patriot said, David, I can't find anything that David Hatley, independent candidate for Tennessee gubernatorial race, stands for. I've seen he stands against some things, supposedly. Do you know anything about his policies? I'd love to vote against Marsha Blackburn. I'm just not sure who to vote for. So I have mentioned Monty Fritz. I've had an interview with Monty Fritz, and I know where Monty Fritz stands on the surveillance cameras and the data centers. Unfortunately, he's not putting out a statement. He's not making it a real issue. He hasn't put out an official statement. I've cobbled together, I read for you the summary of what he said in various interviews about these things. But he's got the right position on this, as he does the right position on the role of government. Unfortunately, this is an opportunity that he is missing because he's not capitalizing on the bipartisan rejection of all of this. The Democrats, when you come to the flock cameras and the data centers, the Democrats are 100% right on that. Now, they've got, obviously, other issues. They're pushing socialism. They're pushing LGBT, critical race theory, and all these other things. I look at it and I say, well, are those things that we can stop in Tennessee if we can get a governor who's going to stop the surveillance state rollout? I think those things can be opposed in a different way with a divided government. I don't think the Republican legislature is going to stand for the types of insanity that we've seen from the Democrats in other states. But of course, I may be wrong on all that. I've never voted for a Democrat in my life, but I might do that in the general election if Monty doesn't win in the primary. High Boost says, Trump took the Biden route. Do whatever you want, regardless of the crimes. And at the end, your administration, you pardon yourself, your friends, and your family. That's exactly right. That's what Trump is going to be doing. And they're so much like each other, aren't they? Thank you for the tip. Eugenion D's, I guess is how you pronounce that. I'm sorry. So I'm surprised Tennessee is allowing these cameras to go up. Yeah, I am too. The problem is that this is part of, they do this type of thing, just like they'll get us involved in these wars because they know that the Republicans have a built-in bias for defense, for police. They'll exploit that, and they'll exploit the fact that people are ignorant of where this is going. And that is what makes it so dangerous. And that's why we must not give a pass to any party or to any politician. They might just be playing you because they know that you have a bias towards law enforcement. Folks, this is not about law enforcement. It doesn't help law enforcement. And again, take a look at what happened in Atlanta. They rolled out 5,000 of these things. How much would that cost your city? And then go in and spend millions of dollars on flying drones. It hasn't helped. As a matter of fact, I think like everything else, when you look at what happens to people when you bring in AI to help them do their job, what happens? They atrophy. They get lazy. I think it's going to make crime worse, but it certainly will make the government a criminal. We have seen this over and over again. CJP Rumble, thank you very much. He said, Brian Festa, get him on the show. We'll have to investigate that. I'm not sure who that is. And I think there was a tip up there that we missed, Travis. Yes, North American House Hippo, thank you so much. He says, thank you for accommodating my schedule. I'm not sure what your schedule is. I'm glad that we're accommodating it. I wasn't aware of it, but I would if I could. Thank you so much for joining us. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow because we're going to talk about what you can do at the state level and many other practical things to oppose on the AI data centers. Thank you for joining us. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.